3 years ago today, I released a tool that lets you create a highlight effect in DaVinci Resolve. Basically what you do is you select an area on your screen, and then it brings that section up full screen, centers it, does a bunch of focus effects so that way it blurs the background, dims it, and just brings attention to whatever you select. In those 3 years, I've continued to update the tool and make it better and better, and today I have some awesome new features to share with you. Whip Highlight has two versions available. It has the free version as well as the paid version, and the paid version is part of my editor collection toolkit, which I'm going to talk more about at the end of this video. But the free version just has a few less features. It's a bit of an older version, but it still lets you do 90% of what I'm going to show in this video. Let's hop into DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to show you what it can do, and then at the end I'll talk about that editor collection pack, which is really cool. In DaVinci Resolve, Whip Highlight works as either an effect or a generator. So the effect is applied to the clip itself, and the generator is applied as a track on the track above it as sort of an adjustment clip. Now usually I like using the generator version. If we come up to the effects tab, generators, and grab Whip Highlight and drag this down onto the timeline, the reason I like using it is because it's super easy to set where I want it to start, where I want it to end just by dragging this out, and I can visually see exactly when it's going to show up. If it's the effect version, you can do all the same stuff, and there's some really nice shortcuts to be able to choose when it starts, but you can't see it. You lose that visual aspect. So anyways, using the effect version, a really important part about this tool is having some on-screen controls. So down in the bottom left, you want to press this drop-down menu and then choose the Fusion overlay. And once that's done, you see we have some points on the screen that I can move these around, and we can change this brighter area of the screen. In the inspector, you can see that the preview mode is set to be on. This means it's not going to do any animations, it's not going to do the highlight effect. All it's going to do is show us the region that is actually going to be affected in the end. So basically, what we want to do is take these 2 points, the one on the top right and the one in the bottom left, and we want to position these around the object that we want to highlight. Now in this case, we're going to take this review right here and spotlight this and make this nice and big. So what I'll do is I'll zoom way in, I'm going to take this top right point and move this down. And basically what I want to do is position it so that way this review box is taking up the entire area. Then I'm going to go to the bottom left and do that same thing. I'm just going to shrink this up and then bring it out so that way it fits. And now to make sure the corner radius matches these blocks on my website, we're going to scroll down into window 1, press the drop down menu, grab the corner radius, and then I'm just going to move this back and forth until that matches as close as I can get. And the really cool part about this pack is just how simple and how fast it is to use. If I want to highlight this section, all I need to do now is take the preview mode and set that to be off. And what you can see is it's going to animate that up right in the center of the screen. It's going to blur the background, so it just brings total focus to this one block. And the cool thing about this is it uses my AnimEngine, so it does all the animation for you without using keyframes. It automatically makes sure that the animation is at the beginning as well as the end of the clip. And using these settings right here, we can customize everything about it as to how long it takes, when it starts, and what the easing is. We'll talk more about that in a bit. First, what I want to do is go over the different highlight modes. So the first one we have right now is set to center and focus, which if we press the drop-down menu is actually the last one. So let's go back and just take a look at the focus mode. What this does is it doesn't do any transformation. All it's going to do is blur the background, it's going to add in a drop shadow behind this, and it might dim it a little bit. If we want to customize the focus settings, we can just switch over to the focus page, and you see it has a drop shadow on. We can blur the background, and then it's also dimming the background just a little bit. And I can turn any of these on or off. I can change their intensity just by switching a few simple sliders. And switching back to the controls tab, the next option that we have is scale. And just so we can see this better because it's really blending in with these other objects, I'm going to switch the style to be scale and focus, which is going to combine those two so that way we have that nice separation from the background. What this one does is instead of moving it to be in the center of the screen, all it's going to do is scale it in. And now in this case, we're losing some of the box off on the right. So what we'd want to do is change the pivot point of that scale. If we scroll down, we have the, under window 1, we have the auto pivot selector. Right now it's set to be the center, which means it's always going to pivot from the center of the box. What we can do instead is press the drop down menu, and then we want to look for right center. So that way you can see on the screen, it puts a pivot point on the center. And now it still animates from its original position, but is going to start moving to the left, so that way it is not going off the screen. If we want with the auto pivot, we can come down here and set this to be off. And what that's going to do is add in a box, so we can come on the on-screen controls and move this around and put the pivot wherever we'd like. But most of the time for this, I just like using the auto pivot settings, so that way if I have to move those points around later, it's automatically going to make sure that the pivot is set to the right side of the box. All right, so that's really cool. Going back up to the top, the last two styles that we have are center and focus. We're just going to jump right to center and focus, which is the default option of this tool and the way that I like to use it most of the time. So for this one, the resting position, we have two different controls. So on the on-screen control here, we can just grab this and move it around so we can change where it ends up. And if I scroll down in the inspector, you can see that's labeled the center control. And then we can also change how big this actually gets. So if we want to keep this right in the center and make this huge, we can absolutely do that. And it automatically updates all the animations so that way it looks nice and smooth. And another amazing feature about this is that we can have up to 4 different highlight windows at once. We're going to talk about that in 1 second, but first I want to talk about the global AnimEngine. So the AnimEngine is my system that's throughout all of the editor collection tools that basically lets you do any sort of animation without having to touch keyframes. You can see if I want to turn off the out animation, I can just check this box, and then when we go to the end, it doesn't animate out. It just instantly goes out when the clip is over. I can also come in here and say I want the animation length to be 2 seconds instead of 1 second, and now it's going to have a lot slower of an animation. If I want, I can have a 2-second animation at the beginning, I can turn off the mirror, and then set the out animation to be only 1 second. This is what I mean when I say you have full customization over the animations. Now, one more thing to point out is the start here and end here buttons, which allow us to customize the animation just by using our playhead. So if I want the animation to start happening right here, I can press start here, and it's going to add an offset so that way the animation doesn't start until it gets to my playhead. Then I can move forward a bunch and say, all right, I want the animation to end right here. I can press that button, and now our animation is going to take place in that section that we specified. Now, most of the time with the generator version, I just leave the offset to be 0 and set the length manually or by using the end here button, because it's a lot easier just to shift the clip back and forth, make it longer, make it shorter, and that way it's a lot more visual. It's not starting the animation halfway through the clip. But if I was using the effect version, which lives on the clip, I might not want the highlight to start showing up until right here. I don't want to cut the clip, I don't want to do any of that, so all I'd have to do is come into the inspector, press the start here button, and that's when the animation would begin. Alright, but anyways, I'm just going to set that back to the default settings, and we're going to talk about using multiple windows at the same time. And in order to do this, I'm going to make this window a little bit smaller. So let's grab the size, bring this down to something like 1.5. We'll just leave it at the default. And then I'm going to shift the center off to the side here so we can make room for another review to pop up. Let's put it at 0.75. Now, when adding another window, I like to go back to the preview mode, and then we'll add window 2. You can see that's going to add in another box, and then we have our own on-screen controls for that. So let's zoom in here and make sure that that is all positioned correctly. And then we'll do the same thing for the bottom left point. Now, just for consistency, down here, we're going to go into window 1. We're going to copy the corner radius, come down to window 2, and then we're going to paste that in there just so that way it is exactly the same. Now, if I turn off preview mode, you can see we have these 2 different windows, but this one is not quite in the right position. So let's come down here and set the Y value to be 0.5, and then we can set the X value to be like 0.25. And we might want to shift both of these closer to the middle. Now, if I go back to the beginning and press play, both of these are going to animate on. One really cool thing about this new version, which is only going to be in the paid version, is that you can actually change the order that these layer. So if I move this one over, you can see it's showing above this review. But over in this active window section, what I can do is grab window 2, drag this up to the top, and that way it's going to show above the first window. So really cool. Another amazing feature with the AnimEngine is that we have our global AnimEngine up here, but all of these windows have their own AnimEngine. So let's say window 2, I wanted it to wait just like half second or maybe a couple seconds for it to actually animate on. And this is where those start here and end here buttons can become really useful on the generator version. So for this, I'm going to make this clip a little bit longer so we have some more room to play with. And down under window 2, I'm going to unlink the animation, which adds in a whole other AnimEngine just for this window. So let's say we're going through and I don't want the second window to animate until right here. What I'm going to do is just come over to the inspector, press the start here button. We can leave the length at 1 second. And when I press play, it's going to animate on window 1. And then once it gets 3.8 seconds in, it's going to animate window 2 on. So overall, this tool is just really flexible. So like I said, Whip Highlight does have a free version. If you want to try this out and use it in your videos, it doesn't have the latest AnimEngine. It doesn't have all the speed optimizations. And it doesn't have the same active windows thing where you can layer them on top of each other, but it's still an amazing tool. If you want to get the latest full version of Whip Highlight, as well as 20 other amazing edit page tools that have the AnimEngine and all of these awesome customization features, then check out the editor collection linked down below. It's what I use to edit these videos, to put my camera down in the corner, do the zooms, the highlight effects, and much more. And it saves me hours in every edit, and I think it can save you some time too. Whip Highlight's always been a fan favorite tool, and I love adding these new features and updating it so that way you get even more value out of your purchase. Let me know what you think about this tool down in the comments, and if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll see you in the next one.